Yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't figured it out by now, it is hate week. Oklahoma, Texas, the Red River Rivalry. Man, I wish they would just kick the game off right now. Can't wait for it. Saturday on ABC, Texas and Oklahoma. The Sooners, by the way, 4-point favorite in the game. If you've never watched any of my videos before, whether you're a Texas fan, Oklahoma fan, or not a fan of either team in particular, first of all, welcome. And secondly, you need to know that even though I bleed crimson and cream, even though the feeling, the thought of burnt orange absolutely makes me want to puke at a spectrum of colors, and I wish you could take the Texas program and put it in a garbage disposal, flip the on switch and leave it on for eternity. That's how I feel. However, my shows, I do my absolute best to be fair and objective to Oklahoma's opponent as well as to Oklahoma themselves. If there is need for constructive criticism, I will give it. If there's a need for praise, I will give it, but I'll have reasoning behind it. So if you want an OU fan who's an absolute homer and say Oklahoma's going to win 77-0 over Texas, the Longhorns are going to lose every game the rest of the year, and Oklahoma's going to win the next 5 national championships. If you're wanting somebody like that, do yourself a favor and hit escape right now, because you're not going to get any of that here. My reviews, like I said, fair and objective, and that's what I strive for. I've done that for a little over a year. I'm not a homer, and I'm not going to change my approach. So you need to know that in advance. Despite that clip that we played, we did that for fun, of course, because Texas knows that they're scum of the earth this week, and that Oklahoma is going to rule. That's, of course, how I feel. Now, talking about the two teams, Oklahoma and Texas. Oklahoma, by the way, I can't remember ever an instance where they've entered this game against Texas undefeated, and yet I've had so many question marks about the team. Particular defensively. Rushing defense, I don't know what's going on. Cincinnati is an average team. The Bearcats were average. Oklahoma, though, gave up over 460 yards of total defense. Unacceptable. By the way, Oklahoma is ranked 97th in total D out of 120 teams, and the situation with OU's defense, simply put, has not gotten any better. The tackles have been getting whipped. Of course, they've been banged up a little bit, but still open lanes for Isaiah Peed of Cincinnati to just find, exploit, and then Oklahoma's tackling has been poor as well, not doing a good job of wrapping up the ball carrier. And at middle linebacker, Oklahoma has a problem because Tom Warts, simply put, is not getting the job done for the most part. And you can't rely on Austin Box because he's still hurt, so Tom Wart's true backup in Box isn't going to be available either. So it is a cause for concern. I don't care what the Oklahoma coaches might tell us. They have a problem and need to get it sewed up somehow. And they're going to go against a Texas offense that, if you don't know, is not the same as last year because it's a pro-style offense. They rely more on the running backs than they did when they had Vince Young and when they had Colt McCoy. Texas has just as many question marks about their offense as Oklahoma has about their D. The reason, of course, is because they really haven't found the guy at running back. Grant, at some point, Trey Newton, Fozzie Whitaker, Cody Johnson have had some kind of an injury issue to deal with. In fact, Texas, trying to find the main guy at running back, have even resorted to going to a kick returner / wide receiver in the form of DJ Monroe. For Texas, it's gotten that desperate. Garrett Gilbert really has felt the pressure of what it's like to be the Texas quarterback. He, simply put, is not Colt McCoy, and you shouldn't expect him to be. He's a different type of quarterback, has one heck of an arm, and I believe he can develop to be a terrific quarterback. But really, to tell you the truth, he is learning as he goes. And for people, if you're in the Austin area, if you're beating up on Garrett Gilbert, it's really not fair to do that. And remember, too, Texas, entering this season, had to replace 3 offensive linemen, which I think is just as big of a story as the changing of the offense and the struggling of the offense. It's simply put just not the same Texas offense. In time, it could be a really good offense, but for the moment, it is a learning school for them, as you found out against UCLA in that upset loss just a few days ago. Defensively, though, Texas is still going to be pretty tough. They only gave up about 30 yards passing against UCLA. When was the last time you heard of a team giving up under 30 yards passing and still they lost by 22 points at home? That simply put doesn't happen, but it happened against the Bruins this past Saturday. And also the time of possession, Texas only had the ball 25 minutes in the game. That's a tribute to UCLA's ground attack, which ate up a ton of yardage, over 260 yards on the ground against Texas. I didn't think that could happen, but give credit to UCLA for that. So both teams, Oklahoma and Texas, entering this game have questions to be answered, and we're going to find out if Texas's offense breaks out of their shell, or we're going to find out if Oklahoma's D can make the necessary adjustments and look like a different defense. They'll have to, because otherwise Oklahoma will not win this game. Key number one, Oklahoma, give Landry time to throw. As I'm going to show you on this clip, you do not have to have blitzes if you're Texas in order to put pressure on the quarterback. At least it'll be shown on this play against Texas Tech 2 weeks ago. Yes, Texas has a successful secondary, but they can't make plays all by themselves. The defensive line must do their part, and it helps if you only have to send 4 guys to the quarterback, as you'll see on this play. 3rd and 5, Texas Tech, 5 down linemen, 4 defensive linemen for Texas. Tech should have the advantage of the situation, you would think. But as I forward the play, I'll freeze it right there, because Jackson Jeffcoat, who you're going to barely see just right there, is going to penetrate to the quarterback for the Red Raiders. Jackson, keep in mind, is a guy that Oklahoma thought they had a pretty good shot at recruiting, but of course Jackson, toward the eve of recruiting, decided to go with Texas, even though his sister will be playing college basketball at OU. Jackson, a true freshman, a guy who's added a little more weight, a high school All-American from a year ago. He's one to watch for the Longhorns. Okay, key number 2, Landry Jones makes smart decisions, and last week, by and large, he did that. He was named Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week, threw for 360 yards, completed most of his passes, did have some drops, however, was inaccurate at times, but not often, and did throw an interception in which he would have been better off just running the ball because he had an open lane. Tried to throw on the run, didn't work. Against Texas's defense, against that secondary, which I think is probably the best secondary in all of college football, one mental lapse could lead to disaster, and here's an instance why. The game was tied at 14. Texas Tech, driving early in the second half, could get 7. At the very least, should get a field goal. Regardless, they should have the lead at home. But the Texas defense makes a terrific play. As you can tell, Texas Tech's going to have 2 receivers lined up on the right, 1 on the left, and Texas, just like we saw the play before, is only going to rush 4 players, despite the drive being in the red zone. Curtis Brown's going to make a terrific play. He's a cornerback pictured right here. As I forward the play, I want you to watch Mr. Brown. Already, he is going to make a break. He's going to make a break toward an anticipated pass. He can read the quarterback. The quarterback doesn't look anywhere else, doesn't check off anywhere else. He has eyes glued on this player who's running across the field. Brown jumps right in front of this pass. 86 has no chance at all for Texas Tech. This, in my opinion, turned out to be a changing point in the game when Tech had a chance to get points in the red zone, and instead it's going to wind up going from the Texas 16 all the way deep into Texas Tech territory because, as you could tell, Curtis Brown read the quarterback's eyes, jumped right in front of the pass. Texas's secondary is the best in the country, and Landry Jones will have to make smart decisions if Oklahoma hopes to go back to Norman with the Golden Hat Trophy. Okay, key number 3 for Oklahoma, defense step up for Oklahoma, in particular against the ground attack, which Texas will feature a lot of. Enough is enough. You gave up a ton of rushing yardage against Air Force. I know they were the #1 rushing team in the country, but 350 yards rushing D that you gave up, are you kidding me? And then Cincinnati, Isaiah Peed with that big-time game. Isaiah Peed's not going to play in the NFL on Sundays, in my opinion, but you made him look like an NFL-type running back on that particular day. OU will not win this game if they can't get this area sewed up. Remember, between Oklahoma and Texas, The team that has won the rushing battle has won this game, I think, like 10, 11 years in a row. And last year, of course, Oklahoma, getting off the subject a little bit, had negative rushing yardage and lost the game even though it was close. The team that could run the ball more effectively than the other will win this game. That has been the storyline between the Sooners and the Longhorns. And Oklahoma D can do their part if they prepare well, watch a lot of film, and make necessary adjustments. So Brent Venables, it's all on you this week to get this area sewed up. And then number 4, turnover margin. There's an old saying, if you turn it over at least 3 times in the game, you should lose. If you turn it over at least 4 times in the game, you will lose. Texas last week, 5 turnovers, 4 of them in the first half against UCLA. Oklahoma, by the way, quite the opposite. They turned it over just once. And Cincinnati had 4 turnovers, and OU wins by 2 points. OU has been solid in the takeaway giveaway category with a +8. 12 turnovers for their opponents. Oklahoma, in the meantime, just 4 turnovers, those non-conference games. So Oklahoma, they've been disciplined in that regard. Could come down to turnover margin in this game. So OU continue to excel in this area. Final thoughts on this game. I believe in cycles, okay? Especially in this rivalry as far as the winning. We saw in the 2000s, the early part of the 2000s, Oklahoma won 5 in a row. Now Texas, they've had their fair share of winning 4 of the past 5. I believe Oklahoma nationally still can have a great season. I think that Texas lost to UCLA really created a lot of doubts for the Horns, and for them it's really a shame because they had a big win over Tech just the week prior. Oklahoma, it will not be an easy game. You will not see the same Texas squad that you saw against UCLA, but I believe that Oklahoma, with the play of Landry Jones, and I believe that Moses Madu, by the way, will see more touches this week than what he saw previously. I think Moses Madu can become a big factor for Oklahoma. Like I said, it's going to be close, but I'm going to take Oklahoma by a thin margin, and I'm going to go 17-14. Oklahoma gets the victory, and the Sooners still keep their dreams for a great season alive. Keep in mind that the Oklahoma-Texas game is not everything. You still have other games down the road at Missouri, at A&M, at Oklahoma State. You still have those games if you're Oklahoma. And, of course, for Texas, you got Nebraska in 2 weeks in Lincoln. And then, of course, you have to play A&M at the end of the year, your rival. And that game at Kansas State's not going to be a picnic either for the Horns. So this game's not everything, but it is important. And I look for Oklahoma to get back on the winning streak against the Longhorns. 17-14 is my pick for Oklahoma against Texas. My post-game show I'll have on Saturday evening. Boomer Sooner.